Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 294. Where did you go? The moment you started leaving yourself behind. Well, welcome to a brand new month, which is going to be all about reclaiming the parts of you that got lost. Maybe through old conditioning, through trauma, or just relationships where you had to disconnect to survive. It's about learning how to trust your gut again, to stop abandoning yourself in the moment, and I think to practice the small everyday ways that you can honor your truth and take your power back. So this week, we're going to revisit a topic I've certainly talked a lot about here several times, but I just read again the other day how our brain needs to hear something enough times to slowly dissolve our denial, and for us to begin to metabolize and be able to come to acceptance that maybe we may need to look at something. And then once we look at it, to have the bravery to actually do something about it. So today I want to get into how you lost you, or at least some important parts of you, how it's not your fault, and how your opportunity to reconnect is always there. So we're going to explore the slow and I think often invisible process of self-abandonment, because it's not always one big moment. It's usually more a series of small ones, like the times you stay quiet to keep the peace, the times you minimized your needs, your feelings, your truth, and how all of that adds up to a deeper sense of disconnection. And then we're going to talk about what it looks like when you start leaving yourself behind, especially in relationships where survival meant silence, maybe compliance or caretaking. And we're going to walk through how to start noticing your own turning points, not to shame yourself at all, but to understand and to begin the journey back. Okay, so let's start with the slow fade. Like, how does this self-abandonment begin? Well, we know it often starts in childhood, and not often with a dramatic event, but with a series of those quiet, repeated messages that taught you it wasn't safe to be fully you. Like maybe every time you cried or got upset, you were told to, in some way, stop being so sensitive, you're making things worse, just go to your room. Or maybe when you tried to express a need, like wanting space from your brother, maybe wanting comfort, understanding, and you were met with irritation, dismissal, or even punishment, even from a parent who didn't mean to, but was just stressed out or didn't have a full enough tank to give you what you needed. Or maybe the family dynamic revolved around keeping one person happy, like a parent or a sibling, or the person du jour, because families can do that. And so you learned that you had to suppress your own needs to avoid setting them off. So that's when the slow backing away begins. Little by little, week after week, year after year, you learn, if I stay small, I stay safe. If I make other people comfortable, I'm a lot less likely to be rejected. And if I show up as myself, it might not go well. And guess what? I can do all three of these things and not even realize that I'm doing them or why I'm doing them. It just looks like I'm being a good kid. And guess what? It's rewarded oftentimes, and so that reinforces it. And so as adults, we keep doing what kept us safe, except for now it becomes our identity. And the consequences are quieter but much deeper. Like you find yourself in friendships or relationships where your role is to keep the peace, not to be honest. Or maybe you overthink every text or every email, wondering how it might be received instead of what you actually want to say. Or maybe you feel anxious and unmoored when someone's upset with you, even when you've done nothing wrong. And those of you who struggle with this know what I'm talking about. Those of you when there is a police car behind you with sirens, or maybe even without, and you automatically think, what did I do? And those of you who automatically prioritize other people's needs, even when you're running on empty, you're tired, you don't feel well, maybe you have needs that haven't been met, which is more than likely true. And you don't even check in with how you feel because you're too focused on what everyone else feels. So over time, we become experts at tuning ourselves out and tuning into others' expectations instead. We literally stop asking ourselves, what do I want? And instead, the focus is, what do they need from me? So you didn't disappear all at once, of course not. You slowly backed away from yourself trying to keep the peace. And now, years later, you probably don't even realize just how far from yourself you've wandered. But that's not the end of the story. I think it's just the part where you start waking up and start finding your way back. So what are some signs you've been leaving yourself behind? And a lot of these, again, I bring up all the time, so they're probably obvious. But I want you to listen again and look for more subtle things if you've already worked on the bigger things that you could see. One of the ways is saying yes when your gut is screaming no. Like you agree to take on an extra work project even though you're already burnt out, you're already tired, you have too much going on because you don't want to seem difficult or ungrateful. Or maybe you're not even in touch with that. You just do it compulsively because it's the right thing to do, or it's what you do, or whatever. Maybe a friend invites you to a weekend trip you cannot afford, either financially or emotionally, but you say yes to avoid disappointing them. Or you say yes, but you can't understand why you're grumpy and frustrated and nothing is going right. Another thing you might do is over-apologize or walk on eggshells. You say, I'm sorry before sharing a basic opinion just in case it upsets the other person, or you water it down, right? You minimize it. You make it not as big of a deal as it really is. You rewrite the text 5 times to make sure it doesn't sound too direct, even though you're just asking for something reasonable, right? You're not being entitled. You're not being a jerk. You're not being ridiculous. What you're asking for makes sense. Maybe you're avoiding your own feelings because they feel like too much. So guess what? You stay busy all the time. You're working, you're cleaning, you're scrolling. So you don't have to feel your grief, to feel your anger, or to sit with your loneliness. And maybe you minimize your own pain by comparing it to others. And this is very common. It says, I shouldn't feel this way. Other people have it way worse than me right now. Another way is you need constant external validation to feel okay, even though you don't want to admit it. So you can't relax until someone else confirms your decision was the right one. Or maybe you feel anxious or even panicked if someone doesn't respond with, oh, that's great, or a thumbs up, or immediate reassurance. And that is one that you may not realize until you start noticing. Like, am I finally okay when someone says, I'm okay? Or am I okay because I think I'm okay? Now, I want to stop here for a moment and say, you probably didn't get a lot of great mirroring growing up if you struggle with the other things we just talked about. So you do need some of that, and you probably need it longer in your life than most people. It's going to take you longer in adulthood, in other words, to internalize enough of that to say, I can trust me. And it's also not to say that we should not get mirroring and feedback, because I think we should. Because sometimes we can't see everything. We don't see all the angles. We don't see the pitfalls. I'm always grateful when people point out things that I may not have looked at in a situation. What you want to look for is a 180. You were fine with the decision, and then as soon as everyone wasn't jumping up and down about how it was a great decision, now you're awful. That's what you want to look at. Another way is not recognizing yourself in your own life anymore. And this sounds heavy, and it kind of is, but it is really important. Like maybe you look around and realize that your schedule, like your goals, and maybe even your relationships have been shaped more by other people's expectations than maybe your own desires. Or maybe you catch yourself thinking, I used to be more creative, or I used to be more spontaneous, or more confident, or I laughed more. Like, what happened to me? Because those are good indicators that you're just going through your life, but you're not in your life. Now let's talk about the role of shame and emotional detachment. Because self-abandonment doesn't just come from fear or from people-pleasing, it's often rooted in shame. So shame tells us something is wrong with who we are at the core. So it tries to convince us that if we show our real feelings, what we really need, if God forbid we set a boundary, we're going to be rejected, we're going to be ridiculed, or worse, abandoned. So instead of being ourselves, we perform, we shapeshift, we hide, we put on that false identity, that mask. Maybe we become the high achiever, the fixer, the responsible one, the peacemaker, the one who always has their shit together. Maybe we learn to only show the acceptable parts of ourselves. Maybe they're the helpful parts, the polite parts, the low maintenance parts, right? Can any of you relate to that? Where you don't bring up the 5 things you actually needed to get done this morning when your neighbor needs help, because that would make you look like you're a pain. No, you want to show up and be the hero and go help her. Because underneath of it all, shame whispers, oh boy, if they really knew you, they might not love you. And where does that message come from? Childhood. Even if family didn't mean to. If it's there, and it didn't get there by accident, because kids aren't naturally that way. They learn to be that way. And so to survive this incredible internal pressure, we can often turn to unhealthy emotional detachment. Like I talk about healthy detachment all the time. That's not what I'm talking about here. This is more dissociation. Like numbing out with work, maybe all the distractions, numbing out with caretaking and controlling situations. Maybe avoiding feelings that feel inconvenient, heavy, or too much, and you can't sit with them. You just go do something. In a lot of ways, detaching from our body, because it holds all the sensations and the cues and the intuition that we don't want to feel. So the disconnect becomes a survival skill. It's a way, and this makes so much sense, it's a way to stay functional when what we actually need to be doing is to be seen and to be heard and to be held. And I know it feels safer to disconnect from your feelings than risking feeling too needy, too emotional, or too real. And probably because you don't have people around you either to hold you and to tell you and reassure you that that's not true. That what you feel and what you need and what you think and what you're walking through is very real and very valid. But here's the catch. The more you disconnect from what you feel, the harder it is to know who you are. And I have clients tell me this all the time. They're like, Mary, I don't even know what I feel anymore. I don't even know what I want. I don't even know what I like or what I don't like. Because they're stuck in this cycle of performing instead of expressing things. Or maybe numbing instead of noticing. That's a really good mantra to kind of stick with. Am I numbing instead of noticing today? Am I pleasing instead of protecting my energy, my boundaries, myself? And so this is how we end up living someone else's version of life. We're doing what's expected. We're saying what's safe. We're being the responsible, helpful, loving one, but we're never feeling quite at home inside of ourselves, which is why a lot of people really lose it when they lose that job or they lose that relationship, because all of their identity and sense of self is wrapped up in it. But here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with you. You developed these patterns for very good reasons. Take the shame out of it. and take the responsibility for understanding and recognizing that they're not serving you anymore. And so the work now, if it's time for you to do it, is to reconnect. Reconnect with your feelings, reconnect to your body, reconnect to your values and your voice, so you can start living from a place of truth, not fear. And that is what my course, Find Your Voice, is all about. All of these things and more is, okay, how did this happen? How did you lose your voice and your sense of self? And then the rest of the course is, how do you get that back? And how do you get it back better? And how do you become more confident and more grounded and more peaceful and have healthier relationships and go after a life that really reflects what you want and who you are? So I want to take a few moments now and have you reflect. If you're walking or driving, it's okay. Just trust whatever comes up in your heart. If you're not, and if you're in a place where you can sit down and write these down and maybe even write some answers, that's even wonderful. However you do it is totally fine. Just trust whatever comes up immediately, even if you try to push it away or say, oh shit, I don't want that to be true. Because that's usually what is true. Okay. When did you start second guessing yourself more than trusting yourself? Like, was there a specific relationship where you can see where your judgment was often questioned, or you were made to feel too sensitive, or like you were too much to deal with? When you were younger, did a caregiver frequently dismiss your instincts or tell you what you should feel instead of asking what you did feel? And let's talk about some of the insidious ways your thoughts or feelings were minimized as you're reflecting. So maybe you were often told, it's not that bad. And so your distress was brushed off with comments that were meant to reframe things. But you know what they did? They really taught you to doubt your own perception. And when I work with relationships or I work with folks around parenting, I hone in on this. I'm like, please do not gaslight them out of what they feel because you want them to be okay. Were you labeled as too sensitive or dramatic? So maybe when you express your emotions, even to an older sibling, there was teasing or eye rolls or some kind of dismissal. So you learn to suppress instead of share. Did adults or older people, when you were growing up, correct how you should feel? Like when you were upset, were you told immediately to be grateful instead of someone first saying, oh my gosh, that must be so hard? Or maybe when you were angry, you were told to calm down. There's a big one. So guess what? You learned your feelings were wrong and that you shouldn't feel that way. Especially if you notice these are negative emotions that can upset them, or they can't handle them, or no one let them feel theirs. Or maybe you were only heard when you spoke calmly or quietly, or you were compliant. But if your tone got emotional or your voice got loud, you were ignored or punished. So guess what? This taught you that only sanitized versions of your truth were acceptable. Maybe even in friendships, your preferences were constantly overridden. So let's say you said you didn't want to go somewhere or do something, but your no was ignored or guilted away. So that sent you the message that your voice didn't carry any weight. And that can happen in lots of different ways. Or here's a famous one. You were compared to others who, quote unquote, had it worse. So any hurt or disappointment you expressed met with stories of others suffering. So you felt guilty for even bringing it up. Maybe you should feel guilty because you have food to eat. Other people don't have it, kind of thing. Or, and this one's really subtle and it's usually not said out loud, but you get the vibe. We don't talk about that energy, right? Like some topics were off limits. And if you brought them up, typically anything about the family, about feelings, about mistakes, you were going to be met with silence or a subject change. They couldn't handle it. So these patterns don't always look like overt abuse or cruelty, right? And that's what makes them so insidious. Because they chip away at your self-trust quietly over time. And they train you to question your feelings and silence your truth, and you don't even realize you're doing it. Another way is, did you start over explaining everything just to make sure you didn't upset someone or get misunderstood? Do you do that now? Do you have to give an entire backstory of why you can't go tomorrow? Right? Are you hoping to prove that what you need is valid? Maybe there was a big mistake or rejection in your life that really left you afraid to trust your own choices again. Here's one, and you might have to take this one with you and give it some thought this week. What were you taught about what it meant to be good or safe or lovable? Like, what were you taught? Again, were you praised for being quiet or easygoing or helpful or happy, but not praised for being bold and emotional and opinionated? Did you learn that being good meant not having needs or being inconvenient? Here's one that's very common. Was love given when you succeeded, when you looked put together or made others happy, but it wasn't really expressed when you were messy or angry or struggling or couldn't find your way? And then were you expected to take care of other feelings, even as a child? And that can happen when an older sibling has mental health issues and melts down. And so you can't melt down too because mom and dad will fall apart, right? It's too much. Or dad's rage or mom's inability to handle anything heavy. Like, you had to take care of their feelings. Okay, so those are some things to think about in terms of how you were treated and what you had to give up. I have some more moments I want you to think about and just see what resonates, as I say these. Okay, did you stop writing or painting or singing or moving your body in joyful ways? Maybe because someone mocked it, and that could have been your sister. Or because life just got too heavy and it didn't seem appropriate? Did you once have big dreams or goals that really felt like they were yours, but you slowly talked yourself out of them to stay realistic or responsible? Like maybe you had an irresponsible sibling or parent, so you had to be the responsible one. Did you stop having really deep conversations or laughing freely or spending time with people who made you feel seen because you were too busy surviving? And did you slowly lose touch with maybe your spiritual practice, your alone time, or even your sense of wonder? So those are some big, heavy things to think about, and just know that whatever resonated with you, maybe one or two or all of them, it would not have resonated if it wasn't time to take a gentle look at it. So know that with all of this, you can still come back. And healing isn't about blaming yourself for disconnecting. I hope I gave you enough context here today for you to understand that if that happened, it happened and it wasn't your fault. But it is about understanding why you did it, so you can start making different choices now. And so reconnection begins, I think, in so many micro moments over time. Every time you choose rest over proving something, every time you name what you feel, even if it's only to yourself, or you write in your journal, or you only tell one trusted, safe person. It's about saying, I don't know, but I want to find out. And it's about reconnecting with your intuition, really giving some thought to what your values are today and what your voice would sound like if you were to use it again. These things never went anywhere. They're still there. They're just under all the noise, all the fear, and you can come home to them again. But know that you can't do this work alone, which is why I coach people and which is why I have courses. And there are different ones you can choose from. The links are in the show notes. You can't do this work alone. You need support and accountability and safe places to do this. So today we took a deeper look at how the slow and I think often unnoticed ways we can really begin to disconnect from ourselves, especially early on in life when survival and acceptance and love probably seem to depend on it. So whether it started in childhood or just really reared its head in a past relationship, the moment you began second guessing your gut or hiding your truth was likely a moment of self-protection. You had to. But over time, those small choices can really add up to a life that doesn't really quite feel like your own. We talked about shame and emotional detachment and that need for approval and how it can really pull us away from our true voice. And then I started to talk about how to start coming home to yourself, which we're going to talk about more this month. I gave you some important reflection questions. If you have to listen to them again and write them down, that would be great. I do think with a lot of curiosity and compassion, you can start grabbing the power to choose something different for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me today. And remember, if you've been feeling off lately, you've been feeling unsure, or you really feel like you lost your spark, you didn't lose yourself. You left yourself behind before a good reason. And now you get to start the journey back. And I'm here to help you do that. And the SOAR community is also here to help you do that. Thank you so much for being here today. If this episode resonated with you, that means you're ready to work on stuff, and please pass it along to others who can benefit. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.